It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, which is presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or visit their Tallahassee store at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Patrick Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I am joined today by the publisher of the Osceola, Jerry Cutts, Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein, and our very special guest, former FSU linebacker Kirk Carruthers. Guys, before we get started, I do want to remind our Osceola subscribers that you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases and your membership card to present for in-store purchases. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us today. And of course, Kirk was at practice last Friday. And so we want to get with Kirk on his day three practice observations. But first of all, we got some cleaning up to do from yesterday's practice. The big news coming out of the fifth practice of the spring was Mike Norvell made the announcement after practice that Chubba Purdy, the true freshman quarterback from Arizona, was going to be held out of the remainder of spring as he continues to rehab from a shoulder injury or collarbone injury to his left side of his body. And he will be out of the quarterback competition until the fall, which opens up opportunities, obviously, for Tate Rodemaker, Jordan Travis, and Mackenzie Milton. They'll be getting more reps. Fish and Jerry, what are your thoughts on how that impacts the quarterback battle moving forward as they prepare for fall camp?
Jerry, you want to go first? Or?
Sure. I think Pat, you made a good point that it gives those other threes more reps. And I think the battle really is between Milton and Travis. So it's going to be interesting to see. We saw some good things from Tate this spring too. So they'll get a lot more reps.
I've been impressed with Tate. Listen, I don't think anyone's necessarily blown anyone away at that position yet. They're all three trying to feel their way through this thing. And they did look sharper yesterday than they did the last time we saw them. But certainly I think, you hate to see a young kid with the talent of Chubba not be able to compete with his teammates this spring. And, obviously that competition would only make the other quarterbacks better. So you hate to see him get hurt. But Fish, what are your thoughts on that, on the quarterback battle as we move forward?
I've always felt it's been a two-man race anyway. Nothing against Tate or Chubba, but if those really were the guys going into this year, I don't think Tate, Milton would even be in the mix or even on Florida State's campus. And two, most young quarterbacks, I know a lot of teams, you'll see a Sam Howell, you'll see these guys play as freshmen, and Kurt will probably be able to jump in and talk about this as well. Freshmen or redshirt freshmen, these guys aren't really ready to play anyway. You want a guy, when Florida State was at their peak under Bobby, they always had that redshirt junior, that guy that had been in the system a couple years and then played in a lot of games. So at the end of the day, the two guys that are going to end up starting I think Jordan Travis will be the starter game one. And then eventually Milton, once he gains his confidence and gets back physically, those are the two guys. Let's be honest. Those are the guys that are going to get most of the reps in practice. And those are the two that the coaches are going to count on at the end of the day to start the Notre Dame game in game one.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Kurt.
No, I was going to say I totally agree with you guys, Fish, Jerry, Pat. I think it's been a two-man race all along from what I saw day three, kind of like going by what you're saying, Pat. I don't think anybody's really stepped themselves, the number one guy right now. But it's definitely a two-man race, not taking anything away from Purdy and Tate. I think, obviously there's potential there and something to really build off. And I think that's why they brought him in. But from what I saw day three, Travis, he looked solid. His arm looked better. Overall, I think, he looked really good that day. Milton, we know he's not the most physically impressive guy, but he's got those intangibles. He's a winner. He's magnetic. And you can just tell the guys once somebody comes in that fresh and that new. So I think it's a two-man battle for sure at this point.
Yeah, well, we text a little bit after you left practice, and did you see any fall practices at all, Kirk? And
I did not, Pat.
Okay, kind of what were your impressions, of the team, of the coaches, leaving that practice? Is there anybody that stood out to you, any particular segment or position group or player?
Sure. One thing I did do, I went and saw a few practices when Willie was here, and I can just say that I was so ecstatic when just coming out there and just within the first few minutes, I could tell it was a total 180 from what I had seen in the past with Willie. I think Norvell's our guy. He's got them, in a whole different level. He's not coaching as a friend, which I thought, nothing against Willie. He's a great guy, but I thought that was the disconnect there. Willie wanted to be the friend of the players, just like as a parent, we know you can't be a friend. You have to be a parent. And just like in that with coaching, you have to be a coach. Coach Norvell's got the relationship. You can tell that they respect him. They're looking up to him. They're following him. And the intensity is just the whole culture out there was totally different. And just like I said, just how exciting to feel that and know that we are making the right moves. We've got the right coaches in place. I think we've got the right kids in now. We've gotten rid of the wrong kids. And I think, just Norvell here guy for.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a different. Go ahead, Kirk. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Pat, please.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with you. I've had a chance to go to some of Coach Taggart's practices early. We got to go, didn't stay around as long as we get to stay for Mike's practices. But I agree, it's totally different. The expectation, the competition level is different than it was. These kids are getting after it early in practice and late in practice when they go into the team period. You didn't see, again, like you said, nothing against the previous staff, but certainly there's been an improvement in the intensity level at practice and the competitive nature of the kids. Now, are you planning to get back out to more practice?
And these kids, I had a nice talk with Coach Norvell, and that's another, he's wanting to bring the players in, and he wants that, that mentality to be back. We are Florida State, like we talked about, and just before we kind of started, we were talking about, some of the comments that we thought we'd never hear from Florida State. Well, I think Norvell is changing that dynamic. He doesn't want us to have those things in our school. And I don't think he's accepting that. I think he's going to change that very quickly. The whole culture is different. And obviously that's because of Coach Norvell. And that's what had to happen. That we had to totally extract that old culture and bring in a new culture. And that's what Norvell's done. And I'm pumped.
Hey, Kirk, I do want to ask you this. Early on the day that you were out there last Friday, the defense was really dominant over the offense, and it was the first day in pads. Was that something that you remember from your days as a player? Was the defense always ahead of the offense in the spring, early anyway?
Yeah. I think initially, Pat, it's I think easier for the defense to be a little bit ahead of the offense. They're still trying to find themselves and find their rhythm and everything else. And so we're just out there trying to hit people. So I think initially for sure defense has a little bit of an advantage. And we kind of talked about some things that stood out. And I was fortunate to be able to get out there on the first full pads day, which is always awesome. And always makes you think, like we talked about, you might be able to have a few more plays in you, but you quickly realize that that ship has sailed a long, long time ago. But I'll tell you, you could tell how the mentality of the players, how contagious it was with each other, and just how the intensity was just a different level with those guys compared to what I had seen in the past. One thing that we all love is board drills, Oklahoma drill. And, you could just tell these guys, there was a synergy, they were pumped. And that's another thing. I'm starting to see that family mentality, which, in the past years here, I hate to keep on relating back to, some negative times, but, we saw a lot of individualism and we didn't see that team mentality. I could just tell from, just being out there watching boards, we're starting to create that family atmosphere again, which, as we all know, is crucial to have a successful program. And that positivity is contagious. And man, you could tell everybody out there was on the same page. They wanted to get after it, and they were having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and Jerry and I met Jerry noticed that on the first day. He was out there Friday as well, Thursday and Friday with me last week as well. And, he's one of the things that Jerry said, and Jerry, I'll let you elaborate on it, is the coaches were not having to coach hustle. The players were pushing each other. And, we saw that in the team first and 10 team period on last Friday when the defense was dominant. The offense came back in the third and 10 period and, won a couple of battles. So I think you're right. You are seeing the players hold each other more accountable than they have in the past.
Right. Like we say, iron sharpens iron, and you can tell those guys are out there. Like I said, they're holding each other accountable, which it wasn't there in the past. All these things are just so awesome to see happen, and just seeing, these guys wanting to get better and then holding each other accountable for themselves and getting them better. So, one player I'll tell you that did kind of stand out to me, which was, kind of refreshing. I wanted to see what he was all about, was Jermaine Johnson. I saw a little bit of swagger out of him, and I know we have to use that term cautiously. We don't want to get to the cocky part of swagger where we had some guys in the past, but boy, this was, I think, a contagious part of the swagger, because once he got and I think he made 2 or 3 plays on board drills in a row, and he had the whole team, the whole defense, and that synergy was created, and guys wanted to get there. I think he's a ball player.
I totally agree. I mean, he's, back when you played, and I was in college at Florida State, you had guys like him all over the field. And, he is certainly he's certainly a guy that looks early on to be a guy that could be a difference maker for this football team in 2021. Jerry, what are your thoughts on Jermaine and, just the team in general?
Yeah, Jermaine's the real deal. Gladden was out there, I guess, Friday, and he immediately focused in on him and thought that he said he reminded him of Pete Boulware in terms of being able to play in space and having that quick first step.
Well, that's a pretty good.
Interesting that he brought up Boulware of all of them, and I pressed him on that. Yeah, I pressed Jim on that a little bit last night on our Zoom happy hour, and because you got what he's 260 pounds, and Pete was never 260. Pete was probably 230, and so you look at a guy at 260, you start thinking maybe of Andre Wadsworth, who was got up bigger than that, but Jim was focused on, not only is he a big guy, but he has that burst of a great pass rusher. So Jim was very high on him. And of course, Pat, you and I, as soon as he walked out on the field, he's the first guy you want stepping off the bus. There's no doubt he catches your eye.
Yeah, I want him coming off the defensive bus first, and I want Jordan Wilson coming off the offensive bus first. I cannot wait to see that guy in pads. I mean, Jordan Wilson is about 6'2", 6'3", 260, and he's got his sleeves rolled up on his jersey when he's down there with what I call the mass unit, where all the guys are rehabbing. And from 200 yards away, you can see tell how big his shoulders are. I mean, those two guys I definitely want coming off the bus. But and to go back to practice 5, which was yesterday, Jerry asked me what my top takeaway was from the practice, other than obviously Chubba missing. And going back to what you were talking about, Kirk, the offense did respond. They went to that same 1st and 10 team period towards the end of practice. And if you had to declare a winner of the two sides of the ball, it was the offense. And so it was nice to see the offense come back and fight back like they did after the defense dominated the last practice that we saw. Now, we don't know what happened on Tuesday. Obviously, we weren't there. But you're starting to see the offense make some strides. And obviously this team's got a long way to go still. Jerry and I try to were talking before we started taping, in spring, you kind of got to temper your expectations because you're not seeing them play against anybody else. Hope springs eternal, right? Everybody's perfect. You don't see the flaws you see when you're going against another opponent. But that was certainly one of my takeaways, was the fact that the offense looks like it is advancing and maturing as, coming out of the fifth practice, and they will go into the sixth practice on Saturday, which will be a controlled scrimmage. And Kirk, as a former player, at one time you were a freshman or sophomore that was fighting for playing time, fighting for starting position. How important are these spring scrimmages to the development and for a player making a move to assert themselves at a certain position?
It's huge, Pat, especially, you know, these first couple, you know, guys are chomping at the bit to get out and hit somebody and really get it on full speed. You know, I remember, you know, when I got here, Coach Bowden was pronounced my name Carruthers, which I'm not sure if he ever changed it, but, you know, no one really remembered who I was after the recruiting process. And I can't remember where I was on the depth chart, but we ran a scout team punt to give the first string punt team a look. And there was a guy named Deion Sanders back there returning the ball. And, you know, we punted and, you know, it's just like I said, just a makeup team to give them a look. And I'm running down and all of a sudden I'm getting closer to Deion and the ball's coming. I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to get to make a play on this. And I thought, oh, crap, I'm going against Deion. He juked about 3 times. The first time he had me, second time he had me. And fortunately for me, the third time he juked right back into me and I made an open field tackle on Deion. And the next day I was starting linebacker for Florida State. So those games are huge. They can, you know, make or break you and definitely, you know, get you on the radar with the coaching staff. So this will be an interesting day for these kids to, you know, start out and see what happens and really get a good look and see maybe who can kind of, you know, make a name for themselves.
Yeah, and of course you didn't come off the field much after you earned that starting spot in spring. You were pretty much a staple for the next 3 years at linebacker, and still one of the most productive linebackers in FSU history. Guys, we're going to take a 30-second break to hear from Alumni Hall. And Kirk, can you come back and spend another segment with us and talk a little bit about what you're doing now and where you are?
Absolutely, Pat. I'd love to.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days. Or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
All right, welcome back, guys. Kirk, I want to continue the conversation with you. Obviously, Florida State didn't do a lot of out of the state. They didn't go into Michigan for a lot of kids back when you ended up at Florida State. Just talk a little bit about how you ended up at Florida State, what you're doing now, and why you chose to stay in Tallahassee after you graduated.
Sure. Pat, I'm not sure. I've heard this a long time ago, but it's like you said, they really didn't have to leave the state of Florida or Georgia for recruits at that time. There was just so much talent down in the South. But I think one of my claim to fame is I was the first kid they ever recruited above the Mason-Dixon line. And, when I was being recruited, Miami was number 1, Florida State, I think, was number 2 preseason. And had been battling, a couple prior seasons before that. And obviously, creating that incredible rivalry. But I took my 5 official visits to Miami, number 1, because I wanted to go there. They were preseason
South
number
Beach.
1, Florida State, Michigan State. What's that, Pat?
I said South Beach. You had to go visit South Beach.
That's right, exactly. And being a kid from Michigan, I was looking forward to trips to Florida, but got down to Miami. And, just wasn't that impressive of campus. The facilities weren't that impressive. So I left there kind of undecided. Jimmy Johnson had offered me a full ride right when I got there, and I was very appreciative. But I said, I'm going to go check out these other schools. Thank goodness I did. The next weekend, I came to Tallahassee, instantly fell in love with it, instantly fell in love with Coach Bowden. He obviously is the master of what he does, is not only the greatest coach of all time, but just being an incredible person, an incredible recruiter. And I knew that I wanted him to be my coach. So the other 3 visits really didn't matter at that point, but I still took my trips just to enjoy myself. But I knew I wanted to be a Florida State Seminole after that weekend.
And you turned out to be quite a Seminole, had obviously a great career. You did choose to stay in Tallahassee post-graduation after a stint in the NFL. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now, why you decided to make Tallahassee home, and how involved are you with the program and the school?
Sure. Once I got down here, I not only fell in love with, Coach Bowden and Florida State and being a Seminole, but I also fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the people. They're the most incredible fans in the country. So it was a real natural transition for me. And a few other things that made it kind of very welcoming it was the state capital, just like my hometown was, Lansing, a big University of Michigan State and Florida State. So it had a lot of similarities just with a southern flair compared to a northern flair, and the weather was much better. So I'm a Tallahassee now. I'm definitely a transplant. I probably will never leave. But I just fell in love with the city, fell in love with being here. And of course, the nice thing is being able to attend Florida State football games and all the other athletic events here that come by being a Seminole. But I'm now the East Coast hospital director for a company called MDVIP. So I'm in charge of all the hospital systems in the eastern half of the United States. I've been in the medical industry for 25 years. So it's getting to be that time where I'm starting to look forward to kind of starting to calm my career down, hopefully, and transition to retirement here pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Yeah,
you mentioned being in the medical industry. What has that been like over the last 12 months with COVID-19? And have you traveled as much? I mean, were you in hospitals all the time before that?
Yeah. It's been crazy, Pat, just like all of us, and just having to acclimate to all of the different, regulations and rules and just transitioning into, a virtual world compared to a physical world. I have been in the hospitals and working, but it's been definitely very challenging. More virtual appointments, of course, compared to more face-to-face, and just getting the perspective on a lot of these high-ranking C-level people as far as what's going to happen with COVID and kind of with our whole country and our world. It's just been very interesting to see what's happening. But we're working our way through it, and we're transitioning as best possible. And I think we've made a pretty good stride in kind of dealing with just this whole new COVID culture.
Is there anything during this last year that's maybe changed about your life that would not have happened if it was not for COVID? I mean, is there anything, we all try to find something good come out of this because it's been such a tough year on so many people, but, is there something that you've enjoyed or didn't know about yourself, or things that you've done since COVID started?
I didn't know that I could respect or appreciate my fiance any more than I already did. But being stuck in a house with me during quarantine and being able to tolerate and put up with me for that period of time, she has raised the bar, if anybody could, as far as patience, tolerance, and love. So I've just been super appreciative for her. And, we had a pretty smooth quarantine. The kids were fantastic. They listened and they obeyed by the rules. We were very disciplined about that. And so, we came together as a family unit, and really we grew and we loved, we enjoyed. And so we made the best of it.
Well, congratulations on the upcoming wedding. Have y'all set a date yet?
We haven't set a date yet, but I figure now that I'm 50 years old, it's time for me to grow up and finally settle down. So
well, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I appreciate it.
Kirk, how many children do you have?
She has 3 children, Jerry. And so I've been with them since the youngest was 2 years old. So they call me dad, and they're definitely my children. So we have 2 girls and a boy, Lily, Maddie, and Connor.
And how old is Connor?
Connor is 22. Maddie's 19, both at Florida State, and Lily is a sophomore at JP2. So hopefully,
cool.
She'll be our third Seminole here in a few more years.
Hey, Fish, you mentioned earlier that Kirk was one of your favorite players when back in the early 90s. What are some of the memories you have of Kirk as a player? What stood out to you about him?
I remember the 89 game against Miami. I think he made a goal line stop where he jumped.
Made a fumble recovery, I believe.
Yeah. I just remember, he played the game the way that guys don't play it now. Honestly, he played with a ton of emotion and passion. And the linebacker position's changed, and maybe Kirk could talk about this a little bit. Most guys aren't real linebackers anymore. You turn on a high school film, and used to run an ISO and then have to fill the hole and you'd hit a fullback. Guys now all run around blocks, and it drives me nuts because it's very hard to evaluate a guy when they're running sideways now, and none of them go downhill. They run around somebody and they try to use their speed and quickness to try to make plays. And most linebackers in high school play almost like an outside rush end, or they play over the slot. You don't see guys really inside the box or traditional linebackers anymore.
Yeah, Fish, I totally agree with you. And that's one thing, Pat, that Coach Vernon wouldn't allow us to do. You wouldn't run around blocks. That was unacceptable and not tolerated. So it's definitely changed, and I'm not sure if that's just because kids want to make more plays and be a little bit more selfish as far as not taking care of their responsibility. But it drives me crazy too, Fish, to see when they do that. So I'm not sure. It's just kids are becoming a little bit more athletic, and they think that they can be quicker to the ball and not have to fight those blocks. But obviously, if you don't do that, then you're going to be taken out of the play.
Hey, Kirk, let me ask you a little bit about that. Gladden, again, mentioned last night, he talked about you a little bit on our Zoom call about he found you to be, he called you slippery. That on the end, the A gap and B gap, that you might have been the most effective pass rusher they had because you slip through there. Mm-hmm. Do you recall that?
I do, as a matter of fact, and I think even Coach Gladden and Coach Berman and I talked about it a few times. First couple of times I tried, doing those kind of like you're saying, Jerry, some of those slippery moves and trying to beat those linemen through the holes and things. Coach Berman, wasn't sure exactly if that was going to be okay, but once I started making sacks and making plays beyond line of scrimmage, he accepted that. And not being the biggest linebacker, obviously out there, I did have to figure out ways to kind of be a little bit more slippery, be able to kind of get around some of those blocks as quickly as possible, still taking them on, but not getting caught up and not, just getting lost in the wash. So, I definitely think that I kind of started to perfect that slippery kind of technique and getting through some of those gaps and trying to avoid some of those big guys trying to grab a hold of me.
Hey, let me back up for our listeners that don't know your background. Your dad was defensive coordinator, right, at Michigan State under George Perlis, as I recall. Mm-hmm. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So you grew up a coach's son, and I think your older brothers both played linebacker as well, didn't they?
One was a linebacker, Jerry, at Kent State, and the other one was a wide receiver at Central Michigan. But
okay. Yeah. And then when you came to Florida State, I think you were a tight end at a high school, weren't you?
I was really an all-American tight end in high school and just an all-state linebacker. And once I got in Miami, was kind of doing the same thing, or what their kind of the thought process was with me was try to test me out for the first few weeks, tight end in the mornings on the offensive field, and then in the afternoons come play linebacker and see where I was going to fit in. But thank goodness that I quickly realized I think my future was going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So that's what happened.
Well, the question I had there was, I know you had you were about 205 pounds, as I recall, weren't you?
That's exactly.
On a good day.
Yeah.
Right. That's about the whole time.
So how much of, I know you're a good physical athlete. But I remember doing interviews with you, and you seemed to understand the game better than most college kids did who were freshmen or sophomores. So how much of it do you think was your knowledge of the game?
I definitely think that was huge, Jerry. Just being a coach's kid, being involved and around football since, I was knee high, or since as far as I could remember. And just being able to pick up on some tendencies and things that, a lot of kids had to learn later on in their career. That was just kind of innate for me, just being, surrounded by football all my life. So that was huge for me. I also kind of prided myself in being a student of the game. I loved watching film and just trying to pick up on tendencies and things that the offense was going to do to, give the plays away. I found myself studying plays and offensive schemes and formations and lineups to the point where, I almost knew the play usually maybe 80% of the time coming out of the huddle. By the time I saw what was happening in the lineup, I pretty much knew what the play was going to be about 8 out of 10 times.
So, Kirk, let me go back to the original question Pat and Fish were talking about. Linebackers today, I remember Jimbo once said that linebacker was becoming an extinct position with the spread offense. And, I think what he meant was the traditional linebacker, and that we were morphing into really a Kirk Carruthers type of a linebacker, somebody who could play in space and cover a tight end and still support the run. Fish, do you think that's about right, what I just said?
Yeah, like I said, I think the game's changed where you almost need safeties, almost like what FSU did. Hey, we took safeties and moved them up to linebackers, DNs, because you just look like the last guys like Telvin Smith. I think Tommy Polley would have been one of those guys that played at Florida State. But when Kirk played, I just look back, the linebacker position was so different. You talked about Michigan State. Percy Snow was one of my favorite linebackers. I remember watching him against Notre Dame just destroy them. They're just the position itself has changed so much because of the spread. And guys, like I said, you used to see guys, he talks about board drills, or I used to just like watching guys when they run power and they have that fullback and the linebacker has to come up. And at that point, you got to decide if you're a man or not. You're going to hit the fullback, break through and tackle the running back behind the line of scrimmage. You do not see that on high school film anymore. I'm just telling you, you can watch every linebacker on 247, Huddle, Rivals, whatever you want. You don't see that anymore. And I think it's because guys don't like to get dirty. There are a handful of linebackers that will bust through the line of scrimmage and play downhill. And when you see those, they're the rare exception to that. But I think the game's changed. Like I said, I think Telvin Smith, those are the guys that like Jimbo try to find, and they're able to do so much more. They're versatile. They could cover a tight end. You're as a linebacker now, you're expected to do so much more. When Kirk played college football and they played a northern team, whether it's Michigan, like he said, he knew before the snap of the ball what they were doing based on formation, what personnel they had in there. So he could guess pretty much right most of the time. These guys today, you got to cover a tight end. There's guys on jet sweeps. There's just so much going on that it makes it like you want, honestly, like oversized safeties now at linebacker. The days of the 240-pound linebackers. And that, when it started, you saw the change was you take somebody like Jeff Luck. Jeff Luck was a guy that came to Florida State. He looked the part. Jeff looked like a grown man when he got to Florida State. And I remember when Jeff got there, I said, what's the difference between high school and college? And he said, Fish, he goes, offensive lineman move. He said the first practice they had, he ran and he got hit by a offensive lineman. And he said he never seen somebody that big in high school move that quick. And I just remember Jeff looked like the prototypical linebacker, but he struggled because he was only good on first and second down. When they went spread or teams went to passing situations, he couldn't cover, drop back into coverage, or get deep enough in his drops. And that's things now that you look for with linebackers. And it's so hard on high school film because most linebackers are playing side to side. You don't see them drop back far. And if you do, there was 2 guys that I've seen in the last 5 years at FSU's camp that could drop back into coverage. One was Amari Gaynor. He was super athletic at their camp. And there was another kid that went to Georgia from South Carolina that was better than Amari at the camp. But that's out of like 30 linebackers that could actually do that. So the positions change so much. And I think it's I don't want to say it's like fullback, that the position has disappeared like fullback, but there's so many things that have happened. It's the hardest position, I think, now to evaluate out of high school outside of O-line. I really do, because it's not traditional anymore. Most guys play a rush end. They come off the edge and they rush the quarterback, and that's all they do.
So
yeah,
Kirk,
Fish. Oh, sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Kirk, and I'll.
But I was just going to say, Fish, you're right on point. I mean, that linebacker position, you don't see anybody running up there and just blowing it up anymore, which, like we talked about, which I love to see. But it's become a hybrid position for sure. And I think maybe that's why you get a little bit more of that safety mentality now that they're just kind of running around and trying to make plays and coming off the edge. So I definitely think you're exactly on point in trying to evaluate a kid now as far as being a true linebacker. I think that's, a real tough task, but I think it's just, but the way, like we said, with the spread and everything else, that position has had to evolve into being more of a hybrid linebacker. So I think that's what we're stuck with from now on.
Until the game evolves again.
That's right. That's right.
Offenses will start running downhill, and you're going to have to get a bigger guy in there.
We'll get the fullback and the middle linebacker back to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Coastal Carolina ran a scheme that was similar to old Nebraska. I mean, they ran it out of the pistol. And if teams start to incorporate what Coastal Carolina did last year, and they had success, you're going to have those linebackers that you're going to need, like Kirk, that come back to the game, because you're not going to have – if Coastal or some team copies what Coastal does and you're running sideways on them and they're running downhill, you're going to have a lot of guys out of position and missing tackles. So,
yeah, they got a pretty good quarterback there too. That Grayson McCall kid ain't too bad. Coastal Carolina, but you're right. A lot of people are going to. It's a copycat sport. I mean, you're going to see people doing what they did, because they certainly arrived on the scene in college football this year. There's no doubt about that.
Kirk, having said all this, do you think your style of play then would be suited for today? Do you think you're the? I happen to think that, but I want to get your opinion.
I agree with you, Jerry. I think he could play today just as easily as he did 20 years ago.
Wow. I appreciate it, guys. That's very nice of you to say. And, I think it was just kind of starting to transition at that time. Brooksy came after me, of course, and he had a little bit more of that. I mean, don't get me wrong. He would step up there and blow people up too, but he had a little bit more of that hybrid, being able to cover space and things of that nature. And so I think I was right at that transitional period. And, in my own mind, I think possibly that I could maybe slip in a play or two in today's game. But I think my style of play was starting to kind of make that transition into being, like we talked about, a linebacker that kind of could do both, could still step up and make a play, coming downhill, or you could still have to, the responsibility of covering a tight end or maybe even a wing back, and still having that responsibility too. So I think I could transition, but like we said, maybe that's just my own crazy mind thinking that.
I didn't mean at 50. I meant at 20.
Oh.
Hey, Kurt, I'm looking for the listeners. We're on a Zoom call, and I'm looking. I always look at what's in people's background of their Zoom set, and I see a piece of art. Now, is that your art, Kurt?
I'm becoming a Renaissance man, Jerry. Right. I'm be finding all kinds of more hobbies now that I'm turning 50. So
with the COVID,
can you see me still?
Yeah.
Yeah. With COVID and everything else, I've become there it is. An artist. That's my beach scene, guys.
Yeah, I remember it's impressive. I remember your mother was artistic.
She was, but I got none of it, as you can tell.
I'm not gonna lie. You just said you're turning 50, and I got like 2 years, and I'm looking at you, and I'm like jealous, man. I got to start working out with you because dude, I don't look like you, and I'm not saying I should, but Jesus, man, you look great, man. I ain't gonna lie.
You could put pads on him, and he looked like a football. I mean, you put pads on him, he looked like a college football player.
I look like 20 pounds of you know what in a 10-pound bag. All right, so.
Well, there's no doubt.
I appreciate it.
That's the most in shape person on this call. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, that's easy money. I'm running fourth. All right. So.
Well, after being on this call with Kirk, I am going to have to get my power walk in today. I'll feel guilty if I don't.
I'm going to work out in 5 minutes. Are you kidding, man?
I know the people of Killarn will love watching a 250-plus pound man speed walking around the neighborhood. You would not believe the looks I get. And if I could jog, I would jog. Hey, Kirk, speaking of that, how, as we get older, the guys that play football, our body's starting to break down a little bit. You're very active, but do you have any injuries that bug you, or shoulders, knees? Are you relatively healthy in that regard?
I still toss and turn all night. Both my shoulders are gone. My hips definitely are numb during the night. So trust me, I'm feeling the pain for sure. And guys, I appreciate all the compliments, but it's pretty much all show and no go. There's nothing left in this tank anymore. So,
well, Kirk, hey, we appreciate you joining us, man. I know you got a lot to do, and it's always fun to catch up with you. Wish we got a chance to see you more than we do. And the thing that Jerry and I did notice at practice, I still remember when you were playing, and I was in the locker room before a game. We were talking, and I said something about you ready for the game. You looked at me, you said, look good, feel good, play good. And Jerry and I noticed that you were still a fashion plate when you showed up at practice. We loved the sweatsuit. Neither one of us could have pulled that off.
I appreciate it. Yep, I still live by that motto, Pat. So I try to always come correct with my fashion wardrobe. But I appreciate it, guys. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. I love it. I love talking Florida State football, so I appreciate you guys.
Have a great afternoon, man.
Thanks, Kirk.
All right, thanks a lot. Go Noles, guys.
Hey, Fish, I want to get with you on one thing.
Sure.
The FSU got its seventh commitment of the class of 2022, a wide receiver out of Fort Lauderdale Dillard High School, Devon Mortimer. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Devon?
Well, Devon's going to bring something that Florida State kind of lacks right now. He's a big play threat, and they need that in that, not only in the wide receiver room, but on special teams. And he's fast. And the one thing you'll notice on film or his highlights on Huddle is that when he has guys have the angle on him, he's able to outrun the angle on guys. And that's the one thing that really tells you how fast somebody really is. And he's not the biggest kid, but someone that wasn't that big and helped Florida State win a national title was Kermit Whitfield, and maybe he brings that type of threat to their offense and their special teams. But he brings something that, like I said, they lacked the last couple of years, and that's the big play. And hopefully, for their sake, that's what he brings, is that ability to stretch the field, force defenses not to stack the box. And just be, especially with someone like Jordan Travis, if he had someone like this on offense, you're not going to be able to bring that eighth man in the box and just sit there and let this guy go one-on-one with your secondary. But he's a very good pickup. My only concern is, and I think, it's not him as much as how many of these guys can they take and have on their roster at one time. You don't want to have a lot of small guys on your roster. They already have Ja'Kai Douglas. They have Corey Wren. They have the wide receiver that came out of Pensacola that's been on the team for the last couple of years.
Helton.
Helton. You don't want to have a ton of these guys on your roster because they're small. You having 2 or 3 of them is fine. And that's my only concern, because I know they're going after a running back out of Lake Gibson that's like 5'7", 5'8", and that would be my only concern, is the size part of it.
Yeah, well, he looks like I agree with you. He looks like a guy that can make some plays, and FSU certainly has some momentum in recruiting. Number 9 ranked class in America right now, 7 commitments deep, and I'm sure we'll see more before the spring is out. Obviously, a big weekend for Florida State and other sports. The NCAA tournament starts for the men and women. FSU's got a baseball series in Miami against the Hurricanes. And Jerry, I know obviously you follow basketball very closely. What are your expectations for Florida State heading into tomorrow's game against UNC Greensboro and beyond? How far do you have them going in the tournament?
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, and I hate to be, but I don't have high expectations for this team in the tournament, to be honest with you. I see some deficiencies that have, as the season's worn on, I think good coaches have picked up on some things that where FSU's deficient, and they're exploiting them. And I'm concerned that I think Sweet 16 is possible, but that's as far as I got them going, Pat.
Boy, you're making me regret my bracket right now. I got them going deep in 2 of my 3. In fact, one of them I have them in the championship game, and the other one I have them in the Final Four. So, but you're right. It's they did struggle down towards the end of the season and in the tournament, losing to Georgia Tech. But the
thing is, I mean, to me, I think our deficiency is at guard play. I don't think we have a true point guard, and Scotty Barnes is if he was here for 2-3 years, I think he would be an excellent point guard. But I look at it like football. It doesn't matter how good your football team is. If you don't have a quarterback, you're very limited. And the second saying, this was pointed out to me by somebody else, and I went and researched it. Our strength of schedule, we only played one top 20 team this year. And it's surprising, but we're ranked 59th in strength of schedule. And Georgia Tech was ranked 2nd. They played 9 top 20 teams during the course of the year. So it was an odd year in the ACC where, we had wins over teams like North Carolina and Duke but Louisville, but those teams weren't ranked. And it's just an odd year. And I'm not sure, during the course of the year that we were sufficiently tested.
I had an opportunity to watch the last 2 games against North Carolina and then the Georgia Tech game. It's a one position, and I'm not the expert you guys are about basketball, but the point guard position is not having a traditional point guard, especially in playoffs or tournament time. The turnovers in the Georgia Tech game were all self-inflicted. I didn't think like Georgia Tech was playing great defense. It just seemed like so many of the bad passes or guys weren't looking when the ball was going their way. And if Florida State eliminates half of those, I don't think the game against Georgia Tech's close. I mean, they were in that game the whole game, but they just kept turning it over. And there was a run where in the second half, I think they had like an 8-0 run or 10-0 run. If they could have just taken that to 15 or 20, they probably win that game and win the ACC title.
Yes, but it's kind of like Florida State football. If James Blackman doesn't throw 4 interceptions, we probably win more games than we did. These turnovers are a lot of those results of not recognizing the defense that you're, and that's experience and ability. And I think Scotty Barnes has all the ability in the world, but he's a true freshman. And And the way we rotate our guards, he's not seeing 35 minutes of playing time. He's seeing more like 22. And so it just, I don't think it's clicking. And that's why there's the turnovers, my opinion.
He's a great player. The kid's a phenomenal talent. You guys weren't lying when you said he was a phenomenal talent. I mean, honestly, I think he reminds me more of like a Scottie Pippen.
Yes.
I don't think he's a traditional point guard. I think he's being forced to be that, and that's not his strength. I mean, this is a wing player, a guy that, he doesn't have a great jump shot, but that will come. But his length and what he can do, I just think he's honestly a round peg in a square hole, man. I think that he's someone that he'll probably be a lot better in the NBA than he is in college.
Well, you look at a Trent Forrest, who was, kind of the gold standard. He comes in behind a sensational guard. But Trent Forrest wasn't sensational his freshman year. He had come out of high school kind of a scoring guard, and but he developed. And if we had the blessing of having Scotty Barnes for 3 years, he'd be brutal at the point in a year or two. But that doesn't help us tomorrow. And so I don't, there's just not on this team what I call a traditional point guard. We're almost Gray, handles the ball pretty well. But a point guard does more than just score. A point guard helps other people score. He's the regulator. When things aren't going well, he settles it down. He sets your offense, he sets your defense. And he's kind of the team leader, the quarterback of your offense. And that we've struggled with that this year, in my opinion. Now, this was an outstanding year for Leonard Hamilton. I think the team's been highly successful after losing 3 guys to the NBA draft. But that's the deficiency that I see. And I think, gosh, there's so many great coaches in this country. Once they find your deficiency, they exploit it. And so we're getting into we have been in tournament play now, and we've struggled. So that's why I am not as excited about how far this team can advance. Gosh, I hope I'm wrong. I'll be the first guy to admit it. I want nothing but success for Leonard Hamilton, because he's the epitome of what you want in your head coach.
You need a little luck too in this tournament. You need, some of the, like Michigan's a really good team. If they somehow could get upset in the 8-9 game, and then all of a sudden you could end up in the final 8. You need a little luck. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping they can find whatever magic they had in midseason when they were a very good basketball team. But Jerry, you were probably right. The more film you put out there, the more deficiencies other teams see or other coaches see. So you're more educated basketball observer than I am. So I'm gonna probably lean towards your opinion, but certainly as we talked at one point this year, they were one of the better basketball teams in the country midseason.
Yeah, let's talk positive about it. How can they advance deep into the tournament where you see them possibly going? And that's good. Their defense is so damn good. They're so long, and when they can take the ball away and play good defense, it gives them those great opportunities. Nobody's better than Scotty Barnes on, going to the hoop with on a breakaway. And that's the thing. If we can play great defense, we give ourselves a chance, because you get a lot of those breakaway points, points after turnover, which is what we gave Georgia Tech and North Carolina. They scored most of their points on after turnovers. So that to me is the key. If we could play really tenacious defense, we give ourselves a great chance.
Yeah, of course, this is such a fun time of year with spring football and the basketball tournament. And then, of course, Florida State goes down and plays its biggest rivalry in baseball this weekend. Florida State 7-6 travels to Miami to take on the 9-4 and 6th ranked Hurricanes. FSU got a big win in what's been kind of a lackluster start to the season, Jerry, against Florida. How big a series is this for Florida State and Mike Martin Jr. as they head down to Miami? And is the kind of win they had against Florida? Could that put this team on a roll?
Yeah, I laugh all the time with Florida State people. We feel like if you go 1-11 and the one win is Florida, then you're successful season. And Meat is like, he just, Mike Martin Jr. just owns the Gators. And after, we had struggled with them in years past, and in his 2 meetings with the Gators, he beats them both times. So you got to love that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know how you can develop more momentum than that to go to play Miami in the light. But it'll be a great battle. I just don't have a feeling yet for Miami or for Florida State yet. It's so early in the year. But it'll sure give you some idea of what you got in your belly.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you what, his son, Tyler Martin, is having a heck of a year. We saw signs of it in the shortened 2020 season, but he's hitting .410 with a .564 on base percentage, and really leads the team in hits, walks, and has been hit by pitches, only struck out 3 times. He looks to be a star in the making, and may leave, he could, definitely may be the best Martin that played baseball at Florida State out of that family, and the other 2 were pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder how many baseball analysts would have predicted that kind of success for him in college. He came out right in December, didn't he? And he was
he was an early enrollee. He could have been in school last year and as a senior in high school. Instead, he was playing baseball in college.
Yeah, it's a great story, and you want the best for. I mean, how tough is that? You can imagine Pat playing for your dad, but.
His father has not taken any pressure off of him. He bats leadoff.
Oh yeah, the very first game of the season, he puts the kid in at leadoff with granddad sitting in the stands. Holy moly! Yeah,
but he is certainly accounted for himself well, and is a fun player to watch. And of course, catcher Matthew Nelson is having a great year as well. I think he leads the team in RBIs and certainly home runs, but they seem to be getting hot. What we're hoping is hot at the right time as they head down to Miami.
So, every one of our listeners that follows Florida State baseball knows it's a gigantic family. And so most of the fans that are sitting in the stands on the midweek, early season games, when it's cold out there, they know Meat since he was born, and they know the grandson since he was a little kid running around the stands. So there's a lot of family pride in FSU baseball. So going down to Miami is always it's a challenge, no doubt.
Well, it's going to be an interesting week on all levels. Florida State, first football scrimmage of the spring, Saturday. Basketball game on Saturday for the men. Basketball game for the women on Sunday in the NCAA women's tournament. And, of course, a huge weekend for the baseball program. And Fish and Jerry, I appreciate you guys joining us for the Seminole Sidelines podcast presented by Alumni Hall. And please, Osceola subscribers, don't forget, you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases and your membership card to present in person at their store at 1817 Thomasville Road. And we will be back next week. And We'll probably have Bob and Mark both back to talk a little bit more about football and what's going on with the NCAA basketball tournament. And hopefully both the men and women will be going into week 2 of their respective tournaments. And appreciate you listening. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com. We do have some free content. Most of our football content is premium behind the paywall, but you can get a 20% discount off our annual rate of $74.95 by putting in FSU 20, FSU 20 in the discount code field. And we will talk to you guys again next week and appreciate you listening.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!